All right, let's move over to the Premier League. This one gets me a little bit concerned because Matt Turner is apparently on the move, with Arsenal reportedly bringing in David Raya from Brentford, who is a pretty sick goalkeeper when he gets going, and that would be a big loss for Brentford. But he comes in to be the backup to Ramsdale. I wonder what they're promising him with regard to that, if Arteta is going in on Raya. And then it looks like Matt Turner, who's 29, by the way, so I can understand if they wanted to get a little younger, but they signed him. I don't know. It's kind of a weird deal. But it looks like he might be going to Nottingham Forest, and I think Nottingham Forest is waiting to see what happens with Dean Henderson. So there just seems to be this domino game going on there, Heath Pearce. And then Ethan Horvath's Forest future remains unclear, even though I think he was looking for a championship club. So a little bit of that's going on. And we got some Petrovic stuff out of the New England Revolution, because I think Nottingham Forest was looking at Petrovic as well. And the Revolution are blocking it, saying they want to keep him throughout the whole season. Petrovic wants to leave now. So it's all getting kind of sticky, and somehow the Revolution might be, I don't know, man. But let's get back to the core. Matt Turner's on the move, and if Arteta is looking elsewhere, that's a sign they don't really see Turner being the future, and that Ramsdale's ultimately won the number one job. So what do you think Matt should do there, Heath Pearce?
Oh, I think he's got to move. I think for his own ambition, whatever, I think he's had a good period there. I actually do think, although he's lacked significant playing time, he's gotten a lot better as a player. With his
I agree with that.
In that environment, he has, it would be really easy for him to disappear in an Arsenal where you could sign multiple goalkeepers and have him come in and sit as the 3 and like that sort of thing and whatever. But he stepped up and he's gotten a lot better. And now I think for his own ambition, he should be wanting to go somewhere where he can play, whether that's in the Championship or in the Premier League or even out of the league. And if you're Arsenal, knowing that you've got to be probably 30 deep if you want to have the opportunity to win a trophy across multiple competitions. I don't know if Matt Turner has always had the best performances, right, when we've seen him. Although he has been good, although he has gotten better, you got to think about the Arsenal standard, knowing that, like, if it wasn't for living in the generation of City, you're talking about the Premier League champions. You're talking about one of the top 5 teams probably in the world last year. And so there's always going to be a conversation about making your squad deeper and better. That might come at the detriment of us. So if he has the opportunity to be able to get out and go somewhere else where he can benefit, better that than to sit as like a number 3 on a roster,
Yeah, I think that Forest would be an interesting move. And I wonder how much trust. I mean, would he come in as the number 1? Is he coming in to compete? I wonder what that looks like. And is that competition going to be fair? Because obviously the Arsenal competition wasn't a competition. It felt obviously very slanted to Ramsdale. He didn't play any minutes in the Premier League. And as the Europa League went on, and we all thought that Turner should have been in those games because he played the majority of them through the group stages, that Ramsdale made some mistakes that ultimately cost them getting knocked out in that competition. So that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. And when you speak about ambition, I wonder, speaking about Matt in particular, if he thinks that going to the Championship would be a drop down. And at some point, I think you have to accept, like, if I want to play, that's probably going to be the best place for me to do it. Not to say, I think he could play all over. Again, this is an indictment on Matt and his talent, but it might just be hard to garner that interest, especially if a lot of teams already have what they have. But Forest is an interesting one, and I hope, because they survived in the Premier League, what that investment looks like going into this, and would he get a fair shot? It's very similar to Eunice. You just want to make sure our players are getting a real crack at it,
They've got a difficult owner. I know that. Obviously, we had American Dane Murphy was the CEO there for a good amount of time, and he walked away. I think there's a lot of complexities with the ownership group and the team. But, I mean, you take all that aside, that's from a very skewed point of view from somebody who was within the offices of that versus being a player. That, like you said, you just want to be able to go somewhere where you can compete or at least prove yourself. If you're not getting the number 1 when you come in, an opportunity to say, hey, but if I'm outperforming, because goalkeeper is like either you're in or you're out type of thing, it's not so much that somebody earns it. It's that the starter gives it up, like they open the door for competition versus it being like a week in, week out, how you do in training type of thing. Like you see with other positions potentially.
Right. Well, speaking of goalkeepers, as I mentioned before, Jordi Petrovic from the New England Revolution isn't happy. He wants to make a move, and he's reportedly sitting out of training, so we'll keep everybody posted on that. And then I think there's a couple other transfers that are interesting that Lucas Zelorayan from the Columbus Crew secured a deal to move to the Saudi Arabian League, to Al Fateh, and apparently it wasn't for that much money, Heath, for $2.5 million. And I know he's 31, but I find that interesting. Now I'm a huge Wilfred Nancy fan. I think that guy is a hell of a coach, and the Crew look fantastic and inspired, and it's a lot of fun to see how they've been performing this season under Nancy as coach. And he already shown signs of what he could do at Montreal prior to taking this job from Caleb Porter. But kind of just letting Zelorayan go. Clearly they have a plan in place and trying to transition away from him.
He only had 1 year, 1.25 years left on his contract. And
yeah, that's true.
And maybe
but it wasn't like $2.5 million. Is that really going to move the needle? But I think if you're trying to just kind of move on without him, let's leave the money out of it, just from a team building perspective, then maybe it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you never know what the actual intention was. It could have been life-changing opportunity for Zelorayan, and he was really forcing it or pushing it, and that's what they're willing to pay. I certainly think the Saudis have more money than that, if they wanted to. But yeah, it's an interesting one, and definitely feels like it's on the lower end. Again, I think he's past sort of the peak of his career in terms of market valuation, with 1 year left on the contract. I don't know.
Right.
I guess mentally I'm trying to justify it. It does seem really low considering the standard right now in Major League Soccer and what the fees are, but not sure. Who knows if there's like something else involved in the deal of some kind.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then finally, LAFC, or former LAFC striker, another one, because Chicho Arango came back from Mexico and went to Real Salt Lake. And now we have Diego Rossi, who is looking to come back from Fenerbahce, I believe, from the Turkish Super League, and signing with the Columbus Crew. So clearly there was some method to that madness if they're going to allow Zelorayan to leave and get Diego Rossi back into it. What are your thoughts on that? All these LAFC strikers coming back into the league and playing for different teams.
I mean, it shows you, one, the success that LAFC has had is not accidental, right? They're putting some of these guys on the map. Diego Rossi was so good during his time, and then obviously immediately Chicho Arango made Diego Rossi surplus, and the quality that Chicho Arango had. He leaves because now you've got Denis Bouanga who comes in, and you've got Carlos Vela playing more like a striker. And so
potentially Chucky Lozano is coming into LAFC, who said his goodbyes to Napoli, by the way. So he's definitely on the move.
Yep, absolutely. And so, yeah, it's good. It's good to have those players that, I mean, if you think about it, and you're a club, right? You're like, I'm going to have to spend some money on this guy. He's going to be a lot. He's unproven. LAFC took all the risk for you. Now these guys leave and they come back. You know what they're capable of, right? If you're RSL, you go, well, we saw him score here. We saw what he's capable of. Let's throw him straight into the mix. Oh, yeah. Then he starts scoring right away. And then on the flip side with Diego Rossi, you know what he's capable of. There's not a lot of mysteries there, right? It's whether his injuries, does he want to live in the city? Those types of things are a different conversation than the risk of bringing in a South American player that is unknown, and you're taking a risk. You and I know, Jimmy, when we were at some of the clubs that we played for, you take a risk on guys. It's scouting is better than, you have more access to footage, more accessibility. The globalization has made that easier, but you're still taking a risk with anybody that's not really well connected within your league on whether or not they're going to pan out. And if you take a big swing and it doesn't work, that could cost the coach a job.